Life Audio.
I had painted myself into a corner where it was like, how now do I get help myself without losing everything that I've worked for?
Yeah.
That was the story in my mind. And I began desperately trying to control the outcome. So like just figuring out how I could maybe go to treatment and lie about it and all these things. And that kind of culminated in my best way out was just suicide. That was what I was thinking. And I ended up writing a suicide note.
Hello, and welcome to the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. I am your host, John Seidel. This is your home for real stories, radical vulnerability, and remarkable comebacks. In the end, this podcast is a place for the desperate, the downtrodden, the destitute, and especially the drunk. But it's also a place of hope and healing. I know that firsthand because I'm the Christian who became an alcoholic, not the other way around. Today, I've found sobriety after decades of struggling. But more importantly than finding sobriety, I found Jesus. My prayer is that as I interview people just like you and just like me, along with professionals in the fields of trauma, faith, and addiction recovery, you will find the peace that is available to you through Christ on the other side of whatever you're going through and whatever addiction that might be, because let's face it, we're all addicted to something. So welcome. Let's get radically vulnerable as we explore what it looks like to be on this journey of messy sanctification. You know, I think that one of the greatest fears that so many of us have, especially if we are Christians, and I think especially if we are in addiction recovery, is that we will become hypocrites. And I want to say something that's going to sound controversial, but I don't think it is. I want to normalize hypocrisy. Let me explain that. I don't mean that I want to excuse hypocrisy. I want to normalize it, though. Because here's the thing. We are all hypocrites. And like, we can't live out our faith perfectly. There was one person who could do that. And so I think if we just concede that we're going to be hypocrites in our lives, what we will do is we will actually live in more freedom. See, because what happens when we fear hypocrisy and think that, oh, I can't be honest about where I'm struggling, I can't be honest about where I'm failing or falling, we then start living lies, and the devil is like, I got you, and I want that. Right? And then when we start living in lies and when we start hiding things, that's where he does some of his best work. That's going to be obvious to you when we talk with today's guest, Jed Payne. Jed is a normal dude who struggled with addiction his entire life. In fact, up until just this last September. That is despite the fact being a substance abuse counselor. Despite having a sobriety and addiction podcast for the last, years and years. And what happened is he started slipping, and instead of being honest about it, he started hiding it and started living this double life. And he was so afraid of being the hypocrite and exposed as the hypocrite that then the devil used that to just hook him and get him deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so finally, this last September, he said, I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to come clean. I'm going to be honest about it. And as he tells it, it is the most freedom he has experienced. So I just want you to hear, like, the fear of hypocrisy, I think, is so much greater than the freedom that is found in honesty. Think about that, right? The fear of hypocrisy is so much greater than the freedom that is found in honesty. And that, I think, is Jed's message. And he's someone who's still, he's still going through it. Like, he's back in a sober living house. And so I hope that you will I hope that his story gives you encouragement that telling the truth, if you're listening to this right now, telling the truth is so much better. He would have saved himself so many years of heartache recently if he just would have told the truth. So with that said, let's get into it with Jed Payne. He's the host of the Church and Other Drugs podcast, and I think he brings a level of vulnerability that we all need. Jed Payne. Jed, thank you so much for joining the Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic podcast. It's great to have you on. I've been on your podcast, and now we get to flip and turn the tables, my friend.
Yes, dude, thanks for having me on. It is nice to not be in the driver's seat sometimes.
Yeah, right? You can just be like, I'm just going to answer questions this time.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had someone reach out to me a few weeks ago, and they're like, hey, could you have more men on your podcast? And I think what is interesting, and maybe you found this, is that generally women do tend to be more open about their recovery stories. So when I find a fellow brother who is willing to talk about it, I think it's good and important. I don't know. Have you found that?
Yeah, well, in the like therapeutic space professionally, men are extremely rare. Number one. So that part is true. Telling their story, I've found that there's like that new wave of, I don't even know what you want to call it, like bro therapy, where like it's a lot of like, for some reason the new thing is like ex-Navy SEALs going on and like being like, I guess they consider talking about their feelings, like how they cleared a house in Afghanistan or something. But I felt like, and I'll get men the vulnerable part. It's like there's certain parts of stories that I've found that most people are fine telling, but I guess it is more rare to hear men talk about, like, it's like they can talk about the external events, I guess, but like what was going on inside at the time is probably less of a subject. And they may just not have the emotional language to say it. I mean, most, or not most, I always paint with broad brushes, but generationally, for sure, this is probably the first and second like generation in a while from like going back from like World War II, where men were more encouraged to actually like go to therapy and actually do something about their own stuff.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you said about listen, I have nothing against Navy SEALs having podcasts and stuff, but it's something that I can't remember if I talked about this on your podcast at all, but I'm going to hopefully write an article on it soon, or maybe by the time this comes out, it'll be out. But I call it the militarization of manhood, and where that has become like the thing, right? Is like, and I think where there's a place for that, I think a lot of men are being told that in order to be a man, it looks like, hey, you're going to go on a retreat, you're going to sit in the ocean in 20 degrees until you're frigid and be told, man up, man up, man up. And again, like, there are some people who respond to that, but yet I think we're being kind of flooded with, well, that's what manhood looks like, right?
Right.
And I think in some ways it's leaving a lot of people behind, and it's sending a wrong message, that's the only way that manhood looks like, For
sure. And almost in all cases of those things, if you just trace the line, they're selling something. Like, either they're selling that like $10,000 man experience.
Yep.
There's a really great, like, it's so good that at first I was like, oh my God, here we go, another one. But there's an incredible parody account of one of those like man camp things.
Oh,
and it's like,
really?
it's so good because it's like, you can barely tell it's parody, but it's just like, yeah, it's so funny, dude. Like, everyone involved is comedians, and it's just, and then he responds in the comments like it's real. I can't remember the name of it, so it's kind of worthless to bring up, but it was so funny. It's like Alpha Camp or something like that. It's so funny, dude.
Yeah.
Because it's ridiculous. It's like, it's so ridiculous. And it's like, that's, it almost goes back to like Wild at Heart if you take the Christian, wasn't that the Christian
John Eldredge
book on Christian manhood?
Which by the way, I'm not against, like, I've read Wild at Heart, and there are things in there that I think are great. I think
sure.
Where I think it goes off the rails is to say that's the only expression, or that's the only way, or, you know, you're not truly wanting to invest in your family if you're not going off into the woods or coming to this man camp, like you said, buying my thing, which ends up like, now you're selling me supplements, you know?
Yes.
And like, you know, placenta blood, you know, and I've got to like bathe in this and do like 7 cold plunges a day. And I'm like, sorry, I hate cold plunges.
I know.
I'm never going to do one. So I'm sorry.
Cold plunges are nice though. But
what's that?
Cold plunges are nice though.
I have friends who do it, and I'm like, dude, cold plunge away. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I'm like, every bath I took was a cold plunge.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, anyways, I'm off on a tangent. And if you're listening to this and you love man camp, do it. Go ahead. I love that for you. But it's not the only thing, right? And it's not the only way. And to your point, I think ultimately where we were going with this is often, I think those camps, those places, that formula doesn't push what I call, and what you and I have talked about, radical vulnerability, right? It's still just let's white knuckle it, or let's just bro our way to better husbandry, to better dads, right? And I think what we really need to do is practice radical vulnerability and be open and be willing to talk about our crap, right?
Yeah.
Which you are going to talk about today.
That's probably where I would land, is like, because I'll go back and forth so many times too about like, I really push back against the the use of therapy speak, I'll call it, in like out of context settings. So I do all these go back and forth of like, it ain't always about like my mom didn't hug me enough. But where I'm landing more and I'm figuring out is my style is like, but if I truly just kind of say exactly what I was going to say exactly what happened, but exactly what I perceived to happen in my life, you know, memory is not a record, right? It's an interpretation. Then you can't really, I want to say it can't be a bad thing, but it's like, that is my lived experience, and that just is what it is. So so far, it hasn't bitten me too bad. I don't think it's really come back to haunt me yet. I guess time will tell, but yeah, that seems to be what I'm kind of doing with the things that I've been through.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think I've had conversations with family members about this, where I've tried to draw a distinction, and I'm not saying I always do it perfectly, but where I say, you know, they're like, well, but what about this? And what about this? And I'm like, yes, you are right. You were doing the best you could. You were doing the hardest thing. You know, life was hard. And yet I still experienced it this way, and it still affected me this way. That is not saying you are an awful person. That is not saying that you weren't trying to protect me from X, Y, and Z, but this still happened, or this is still how my 6, 7, 8-year-old brain perceived it, and that still affected me through my life. And I think it's hard to draw that distinction with people, but I love that you brought that up. Even just saying like, this is my perception of what happened, right?
Right. Yeah,
So-
because it's important. A lot of people attach or like just assume that. I mean, that's like my favorite game now is to be like, hey, mom and dad, like this is what I remember. Like this memory popped up. Like, what do you remember? And then I'll ask my sister too. And all of us almost always have a different recollection of what exactly happened.
Yeah.
But for me, that memory is like informing like current things.
Yeah.
And like that's where it becomes like your responsibility as an adult to do something about it. And that's where my getting irritated at therapy speak and things like being triggered and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's all well and good, but as a fully formed adult human, everyone else is not responsible for my emotional damage. Like it's up to me now to sort of do something about it. I can't be upset at other people for not knowing what I went through. That's just impossible.
There's a phrase that I like, and I didn't come up with it, but it's like, I'm not responsible for what happened to me, but I am responsible for how I react and what I do with that. Right.
Right.
And so part of me in continuing to go to therapy is, I don't harbor resentments toward people in my childhood, but I do need to work on how those have informed my reactions to when my wife says something, right? And it brings me back, right? Okay.
Right.
I'm working on that, right? I want to have a better reaction. So, yeah, good, man. Great.
I know.
Great conversation in the first 10 minutes. I'm glad we're recording this. But okay, so for people who don't know, you're the host of Church and Other Drugs podcast, but introduce and not, talk a little bit about you in the intro, but I love to have people introduce themselves because I think we talk about what we say about ourselves is important. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah. My name is Jed Payne. I've been doing the Church and Other Drugs podcast for in December it'll be 10 years, which is insane.
Wow.
It's a long time. I am a new father of a 2-year-old daughter, engaged. I am an artist, musician, podcaster, ridiculous movie historian, buff, hobbyist, whatever you want to call it. I love all things like nerd culture, Star Wars. Yeah, I am a substance abuse counselor by trade. I'm kind of going back and finishing my schooling to kind of widen up what I'm able to do as far as therapy and counseling. That's sort of, I know my calling is helping people in one way or another, and most likely it's going to be addicts, but I did the residential treatment grind working as a inpatient rehab counselor for 6 years, and that's very brutal on a person. It's a tough gig, so I'm sort of taking a break from that while I finish school. Yeah, that's kind of the short.
Okay, so 2 things that come out of that I want to ask you about. A, I want you to explain the name of your podcast, Church and Other Drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, and it's not because I don't believe you, it's because I believe you and I want people to understand, why is it such a grind to be an inpatient treatment counselor?
Yeah. So Church and Other Drugs came about as me, and originally we had 2 hosts. It was me and my buddy John. We were old using buddies from middle school, and then he got sober, and then I got sober like a decade after him. And we were both progressive Christians, I'll call it, I guess. We were both Christians who were kind of going through, this was like the height of the deconstruction movement, especially around podcasting. And so we were both Christians, and we were both in 12-step fellowships like AA, and so we realized that both of those organizations had a lot to learn from each other, and both of them did some things right and the other one did some things wrong, and vice versa. So we wanted to talk about that, and then also I've just been to so many rehabs, and I've met so many people, so many interesting people that have way more interesting stories than like half of the celebrity guests I've ever heard on things. I was like, we'll just have all the people I've met on to tell their stories.
Yep.
So that's kind of where that came from.
So the substance abuse counseling,
Oh, yeah.
inpatient,
Yeah.
right?
It's simple. It's like you have to, especially if you're someone that personally struggles with addiction, just picture day in, day out having to deal with 8 of you. I mean, like it gets tough. So it's because it's the nature of the beast is kind of brutal, where it's like you'll do intensive work on someone. You'll have like a caseload. If you're lucky, you'll have like a caseload of 10. If you're unlucky, up to like 20. And so you're working with someone from their worst day ever, and then 30 days later, you get to like, awesome, you're doing great. They leave on a high note, and then usually that same day, you get a brand new absolute wreck. And so there's no real like sense of like, oh, job well done, I can kind of relax for a second. It's just kind of like constant. It's very consistent. They die. They often die. That gets very difficult. Probably like trauma, ER people, military, law enforcement, and like addiction professionals, I would say, deal with the most death. I mean, it's almost like you don't become numb to it. That's the wrong thing, because every you'll still get shocked, but it's just very much like, wow, okay, the amount, the sheer numbers of people that you personally get to know, and then you have to see them die. Yeah. And then the questions of like, how much of that is my responsibility? How much of that is not? And of course, it's like early on, you have to remember that you didn't cause it and you can't cure it. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, you can't cure it. Those are the big unmovables. And for me, what makes me a good therapist is I am very empathetic, and I'm very able to sort of shoulder people's stuff, which is also a huge problem, where I take it home with me. And it's very much a thing where like you're never, if you don't have clear boundaries, which I was not very good at, you never really clock out. And since I also was in the recovery program myself, it became very dicey when I started going through my own struggles. Yeah. And then I'm like blending my professional life, and it just got very convoluted, and it's like a war of attrition a lot of ways. And the nature of the beast, a lot of treatment centers are not healthy work environments. A lot of them are. There are some great ones. It's kind of just like churches. Some of them just are not. And if you find yourself in a very unsupportive, kind of toxic work environment, it's just going to be pretty difficult, especially if you can't figure out a good way to take care of yourself.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. Appreciate that. And you kind of started to allude to your story, and I think you have a really important one, a good one, ups, downs, restarts. And so I would love for you to take us through Jed Payne's confessions story. We'll be right back after this.
Yeah, it's obviously an extremely long one. And the recent events are probably what are more important to me now. I guess that's how it works. But to kind of bring it up to speed to when, we'll call it when I got sober in 2014. So I was raised in Southern Presbyterian in Columbia, South Carolina, or easily South Carolina, if anybody knows where that is.
No idea.
But parents are both married. They were my mom was a lifelong Christian. I think my dad was part of the Jesus movement in college campuses in the 70s. So he was a later convert. They were always married. They never touched substances or anything like that. I have one older sister. Childhood was awesome. I had a super active imagination. And I was overly emotional. I'm going to say overly. I was a very emotional kid, and I took things very heavily. And just one of the earlier things I remember, and now I've come to understand it, like an offshoot of OCD, where I was very, very concerned with going to hell. I mean, as a very, very young kid, very concerned with whether or not I was saved, and not understanding why some people went to hell and some people didn't. And I was very scared that I was going to go to hell. So I would, obsessively say the sinner's prayer. I mean, like, that was like my prayer every night, and always asking my mom if I was saved and that sort of thing.
Which we call scrupulosity. It's a form
Scrupulosity.
Of
Yep. And then the next kind of spiritual thing I remember was like having, so like as like a younger kid, and this is another thing through therapy I've come to find out is extremely common, of just like kids engaging in like same-sex play with other same-age kids. And I remember sharing that. I was young. I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. And this is another one where it's I couldn't tell you if it's exactly what I was told, but what I heard was that all that kind of sexual stuff is extremely sinful and dirty and gross, and God hates that, and don't do that. And so that started, and then I grew into the purity culture movement of the youth group culture of the late 90s, early aughts. Bringing an apple and saying, do you want to give your husband a whole apple or an apple core? And every time, and they would only say that to girls, which is, guys, it didn't matter, I guess. Every time you do something, you're taking a bite out of your apple and that sort of thing, and how sexual sin above all was the worst thing possible. And so that is what I like believed. And so all this, like coming of age, like going through puberty, having this idea about sex and guilt, and never really being sat down and given, I'll call it like a healthy sex talk. It was more, we went into youth group and they divided the guys and the girls, and they brought some dude to tell all the guys about everything, and like masturbation and all that stuff, and just very confused. What I figured out though, and so around 12, I think, was the first time I like smoked a cigarette, and then smoked weed with a preacher's kid. That's the classic story too.
Those PKs,
man. And it really was just to fit in, because I also had like intense anxiety. And shortly after that, I realized that I could do drugs and have guilt-free like sexual experiences. And so that was really what kind of drove my early drug use. It was a combination of that, and my parents started drug testing me really early because they found out I smoked weed, and like in a twist of irony, that just pushed me towards harder things that wouldn't show up on a drug test. And I also had this weird, I guess it's not weird, but I had this idea, because I had my first overdose on Benadryl when I was 15, and like that was my first hospital experience, and I got put in an outpatient program. So I went like ridiculously hard at it very early. And part of it was this idea that I had that, and I guess in retrospect, it's just like I don't know what it was, but saying like, well, obviously I'm not going to do drugs my whole life because I'm a Christian. So I'm just going to get it all out of my system on the forefront. That was really this weird idea I had. And so by the time I was 17, I'd already done outpatient, failed that. My drug use was escalating. I got introduced to cocaine on my 15th birthday. So that was when I finally started like stealing to get drugs. It was going really quick. And so they put me on a waiting list to go to an inpatient place. And the first place we went to was a faith-based treatment center in North Carolina. And while it was like a 4-month waiting list, and while I was on the waiting list, I tried heroin because I knew, once again, I was like, well, I'm about to quit, so might as well try heroin. That was really so I would also, since I was a kid, I would like latch on to identities of either like movie characters or musicians that I liked. And so as a teenager, that same thing happened. And I watched like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and started listening to Modest Mouse and Pink Floyd. And that was what I chased. And literally I was like, well, I've never done heroin and, I'm about to go to treatment, so might as well. But I was just going to snort it. And, the person I got it from just convinced me to shoot it. And so by the time I got to that treatment center, I'd been shooting heroin and cocaine. So that was the escalation. And so it was a faith-based place. There was no 12-step program about it. And like they did an exorcism on me, like deliverance class. It was very, very fundamentalist, extremely. Like we had to go to chapel for 3 hours at night. We were like a traveling men's choir. It was like I was 17 and it was like a bunch of like hardened felons in there with it. But it was like that was an experience for sure. I had some fond and funny memories there. It was super scary, but I think it was probably setting me up. Like going to that type of place first probably definitely set me up to at least be able to kind of find out what you can tolerate, what you can handle. So I thought I was good. And when I got home, like I relapsed within a week. And so then this.
And why
just
do you
really
think that is? Like because my sister went to a very similar program, and as soon as she came back, it was. I don't know if it was a week, but it might as well have been.
How old was she?
Same age.
Oh, okay.
Same age.
That's what I think. So I really buy into the prefrontal cortex formation. So like your forebrain doesn't quit developing until now. I think they even kicked it up to like 26 to 30.
Yeah.
But your decision making, your consequence regulation, all that stuff. It's my favorite sort of meta biological thing that we do without thinking about it. When we make a stupid decision, we do that, and you're literally slapping your forebrain, which is the part of the brain that makes the decision. It's just one of those weird, funny idiosyncrasies. So I think I was just like that was nowhere near done, number one. And then number two, I had no tools other than God has delivered you, so you're good. You shouldn't want it anymore. It was that sort of attitude.
Which so when you're in that environment with all those people,
it's fine.
It's easier to say, I feel like, the temptation's not here.
Yep.
It must have,
Yep. And it was, I remember too, when I got home, all it was like I opened the refrigerator and there was some whipped cream, and I just sucked the nitrous out of it. And I was like, oh, that was all it took. It wasn't even really like there wasn't even much of a fight against it. And so really so from 2000, so then I went on ran away from home, like started really becoming an IV drug addict, and that was when the human body is so resilient. Like I was shooting up like alcohol, like shooting up liquor, crack, cocaine, heroin,
injecting liquor.
Mm-hmm. So you just become, you just become addicted to the process of shooting things up.
Wow.
And so it's like, and part of just being, I guess, insane, it was like when I couldn't find anything else, you just start to wonder, like, well, what else can I inject? And yeah, liquor, alcohol, you can most definitely just inject. It's not the greatest. It was sometimes just like a party trick, I guess, of just like, hey, anyway, that was a short-lived, and so that it ended so bad that I got sent to a long-term treatment center in Louisiana in 2005 from South Carolina. And so from there, it started from 2005, I mean, until 2014, but really then I guess you could say until from 2005 until 2025, I was just in and out of treatment centers. I mean, so what would happen, because I was 17, so I didn't start out with any sort of like job or savings or any of that. So I was pretty much financially dependent on my parents. So I would get sent to these treatment centers. I would do great. I would get out, either like move into a sober living home or move into, a house with someone I was in treatment with. I would make it usually 4 months, and then relapse. And all of my relapses at that time, it wasn't like, oh, I'm just like drinking some beers. I mean, they would end in absolute catastrophes. I had 8 hospitalized overdoses. I was in a coma for 4 days. Car wrecks. I didn't get arrested until I was 25, so I made it a good long time without getting arrested. But so I would call my parents, and they would call the treatment centers. What should we do? And of course, send them back to treatment. So I mean, I went to Texas, California, Mississippi, Louisiana, North Carolina, all over Florida, and I got caught in the like worst period. I guess it still kind of is, but at the Florida drug treatment in those days was just so terrible. And they would do like patient brokering, which is just basically where like it's called like the Florida Shuffle, where you just go to a sober living house, they'll bill your insurance, relapse, they'll send you to another one, bill your insurance. I mean, I did that for years. And I like to sum up like my behavior and the type of addict I was back then. I mean, there was a long stretch of time when I would self-injure to get pain pills. Like I set my hand on, like I burned my hand down to like a 3rd-degree burn to go to the emergency room to get pain pills. I had broken my arm, and I would just like hit it with a baseball bat to make it red again to go to so just like an absolute train wreck of an addict. And, you know, I wasn't allowed back home, didn't really know what to do. I mean, because now it's, you know, fast forward to like 2013, I've just been doing, like I finally got arrested in 2011, I think it was, something like that, 12. And that was the first time I went to prison. And that
How long
was like
were you in for?
Just 6 months. And I got a deferred sentence, a 10-year deferred sentence. I just had to complete 5 years of probation, which is probably what kept me in some boundaries also. But that was so when I got out, I stayed sober for a year in a sober living house, but I had, that was probably the time, I would say, the only time that God like divinely removed the obsession to use from me. Like I just did not, like I was done. But what I did with that was sort of get pretty arrogant about it, and I wasn't working a program, and then I started doing drunk things sober, like they say. Like I got probably like a really unhealthy relationship with porn,
swapping addictions,
and ended up relapsing like I always do, and just same story. I ended up in 2013, met this girl in the program in AA. We went to treatment and relapsed together like 3 different times. We finally found our way to
what a love story, right?
Dude, I know. It was
the addict's love story.
The first time I met her mom was to meet us at the pawn shop to get our laptop out. Like awful. And so then in 2014, you know, I showed up to a treatment center in Lafayette, and I was still on probation. I was living in my car that had a title loan on it. My parents were just like, you can get sober or not. Like, that's whatever. Like, we're still, you know, good luck. And I'd burned the last bridge, like really what was like, God, I had a good friend. I mean, this dude put his house up to bond me out of jail one time. And I stole a check from him and I tried to cash it. And, the bank called him and they were like, they just said, yeah, he says you should go see him. And I went to his house and he was just crying. He was like, I wish I could beat your ass right now, but you can't come around anymore. That was I was like, okay, like you are an absolute, like, you've got to do something. So I finally got sober. And
what did that look like?
Yeah, it was I just finally did all the stuff they had been telling me to do. Number one, I think I had a real surrender moment to God, to where I was like, I cannot do this. Like, you're going to have to help me. I also, this is where I think I had that brain switch, because I do remember being able to have a little bit more sane thinking around, like, maybe you shouldn't do this. And I moved into a sober living house. I got a minimum wage job. I was bringing meetings to treatment centers. I was sponsoring guys. I was in a men's book study. Started attending church again. I started playing music in the praise band. I'm a drummer. Just doing everything that I could to stay sober, like protecting my sobriety as much as I could. And me and that girl ended up getting married. I think we got engaged when we were a year sober, and we got married when we were 2 years sober. And that was when around 2016 was when I started, was when I was like, I think I want to become a counselor, and started doing the work that you had to do for that, which was become a counselor in training and start getting intern, basically.
Had you at this point, had you started to really, do you feel like at least gotten to the root yet? Or was it more just, I know I got to get sober, I know I got to stop, I'm going to do, start doing some of the work. But had you really kind of done the heart level excavation yet? We'll be right back after this.
I think my heart level excavation was realizing that I am a biological drug addict that has completely given up his right to chemical peace of mind, is how the big book puts it. So like I had done I do remember that time. That was the first time on a fourth step, which is where you write down list of persons you had harmed and resentments and things like that. And then the fifth step is you tell that to someone. That was the first time I had told someone about the childhood sexual trauma, we'll call it. And that may have been a turning point for me. But really and truly, I think I had been looking for this kind of silver bullet thing that, well, I will say also, I think for the first time in a long time, I was properly psychiatrically medicated. And I don't know why I hate to admit it, but I've always battled with that, like whether or not my, which I guess we'll get to, my psychological issues were strictly drug induced, like it's chicken and egg sort of thing. But I have done such chemical attrition to my brain that it kind of makes sense that that's just something that is in the cards for me, at least for whatever. So
I think start doing some internal work. You start getting to some of this.
Oh yeah, no, like I had done intense internal work, but I think what was more, there were two things: the realization of that it's not going to be something that I suddenly realize. It's going to be a daily thing that I have to do. There are just certain things that I'm going to have to do daily.
Yeah.
Very simple things. Trust God, clean house, help others. Like just, I have to keep doing that every day. That's going to be my medicine. The second thing was realizing that I could apply my Christian faith to 12-step recovery, like just lay it on top. And it was just a practical guide to living out a Christian life. And that was a big eye-opener for me, because I had pushed against that for a long time. I had thought it was like heresy and blah, 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 because they use the word higher power and all this crap that was just keeping me from having to do anything, really. But when I just kind of had this aha moment of like, oh yeah, this is just... So I think I just started taking my faith more seriously, and I started actually... I also was like really, really tired of having nothing and being at the bottom of the barrel. Like I was just like kind of over it. Yeah. I mean, like I'd been homeless, and it was just like that last year of using was just so terrible. And it was like it's almost like I wasn't permitted to die. I was just living in this miserable existence of just waking up dope sick and trying to panhandle enough money to go to Walmart to steal DVDs, to go sell them, to go get dope and rinse and repeat. I mean, I did that just every single day. It was terrible.
Wow.
Just super, super terrible. And so I ended up becoming a counselor, and we were married, and I think 3 years into the marriage, I found out that she had been smoking weed for like 6 months in secret, that I had no idea. And so that was the first kind of crack in my recovery, because it was like her and a fair amount of other people that I had gotten sober with all sort of just started using normally, I'll call it, like drinking and smoking weed, and just like all of a sudden those of us that actually were still working the program became fewer and fewer. And I think I did start to become bitter. Like, I'd been working so hard to be a counselor, and I finally got there, and it was kind of rough. Then it was like I was kind of not understanding. I think I was trying to get more from it than was realistic, like kind of starting to get resentful at God, like, hey, I'm like taking care of your kids, so why am I so depressed? So why is my marriage falling apart? So why this? So why that? Just starting to get very, very bitter. And then this hurricane of bad things, of events happened to where two of my best friends and like some of my main like accountability, they moved. Marriage was falling apart. COVID was beginning to happen, so no more meetings, no more being accountable, spending a lot more time at home. And at some point during that, I got the idea that I needed to be on Adderall. So I like ran it through all the proper channels. Even though deep down I knew it was a bad idea, if I'm honest. I think I was just I was looking for something because I was so dissatisfied with my life at the time.
Yeah.
And this snowballed into so then I'm like on Adderall and I'm a little too keyed up, and so I was like, well, I need something to kind of bring me back down. And so there's some like legal gray area drugs that you can order online. Started doing those. I started doing kratom again. Then I'm stopping by the casino on the way home from work. Then I'm fully addicted to slot machines again. Then I end up losing a ton of money. Then I'm physically dependent on kratom. And while all of this is going on, I'm still working as a counselor, and this is where were
you doing the podcast at this point?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had still been doing the podcast too. And so this was where I sort of had painted in my mind, I'd painted myself into a corner where it was like, how now do I get help myself without losing everything that I've worked for? Yeah. That was the story in my mind. And I began desperately trying to control the outcome. So like just figuring out how I could maybe go to treatment and lie about it and all these things. And that kind of culminated in I ended up, my best way out was just suicide. That was what I was thinking. And I ended up writing a suicide note. It got that far. And I told someone at work the next day, and I was able to tell my boss about the gambling and my marriage falling apart without saying that I used. And I was able to go to a trauma treatment center, which was incredible. And I did that was where I did do some incredible inner child work and things like that. And a month after I get home from that was when my wife asked for a divorce. And so I just went right back to using kratom, and I ended up this is where it was. So basically from like COVID until very recently was like trying to recover from like the relapse and the divorce. And instead of doing like a heavy down payment, I was just like doing these lesser monthly payments of like, I should have, when I went to that, I should have gotten honest about using. And because I didn't, it was 3 more years of finding ways to just sort of skate by and maintain, and I didn't lose my position. And in fact, like, I got another job and like got a raise, and I'm back in school, and it was better, and I got a new girlfriend, and like things were better. But like, I was on Suboxone, or I was on just things that would just sort of keep me maintained.
Explain what Suboxone is to people who don't know.
So it's just that it's called like MAT, medication assisted therapy. Methadone is probably what most people will know. It's the modern methadone. So it's just a synthetic opioid that you take daily that is supposed to it's really great for short-term, like 2-week detox. It's incredible for that. But pharmaceutical companies really push people being on it for life, and it's a orders of magnitude worse withdrawal than heroin because of the duration. I mean, it takes like a month, like a solid month. It's rough, and I've been on and off that since it came out, back in the the early mid 2000s. And so now I find myself in this new relationship, and I'm still just not telling everyone the whole truth. That's kind of the theme, and
which I think is important to like I'm glad you're drawing that out, because what I talk about, radical vulnerability, and it's like, yeah, you can tell just enough to convince people that you're being vulnerable and honest. And that's not to say that you're not in some ways, right? But you know what you're holding back. And I think your story is a great reminder that you're like, man, if I just would have gone all out, ripped the Band-Aid, done the thing, said all that was going on, I actually could have saved myself a lot of heartache and a lot of pain in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just fear. It was fear that was preventing me from that. Yeah. But also, so this is all also what the divorce and like the result from it just, I don't want to say screwed up, but it has really caused me to look at God in different ways, because, now I have my daughter, and it's one of these things of like, did I have to go through all that to get my daughter? And if that's true, I don't like the implications of that. And it really pulled the rug on like everything I thought I knew about how God operates, and the ideas of like predestination and destiny and prayer and trials. And I still couldn't tell you where. I have not landed on a certainty from that. I think I do still believe that God can make good out of any situation. So I don't believe that it, obviously it didn't have to. I made decisions that resulted in those things, but it was a massive shakeup in my life. And then we went through a miscarriage before my daughter, and so she had gotten pregnant, and that was the impetus for me to go to treatment again 2 years ago. And this was another time that I had the chance to be fully honest, and instead I went to a treatment center out of town. Me and my boss kind of agreed to just keep it on a need to know basis sort of thing. I didn't report myself to the licensing board or any of that. And it was when I got to treatment that I found out she had a miscarriage. So that was another this, so confused about God and just my life and all of that. And so I got out, but because I hadn't been honest, I couldn't use 12-step groups like I should have been able to, because I would see people there that thought I'd been sober for X amount of time.
Right.
And so then I was like, oh, this is a pickle. And basically it was just a matter of time before I kind of basically repeated the same steps. I mean, started using just a little gray area stuff, and it was to treat like the inner restlessness, irritability, and discontentedness that untreated alcoholism was for me. And truly still I had never processed the divorce pain because I had been high during it, and it's I'd just been kicking the can for so long, and I just continued to kick the can, and I picked up again, and then I got prescribed Adderall again, and then but before that we got pregnant again, and my daughter was born, and I was like 11 months sober. I ended up relapsing again, like 2 months before she was born. And so then it was, here we go again. And there was just never in my life plans would I have said that there was even a chance I would be using, like, with a kid, right? With having a kid
we always say, well, if
right,
I'll never do this, right?
Yeah,
it'll never
Turns
get this
out,
bad. It'll never,
it will. And so this all basically came to a head until I finally in September 18th finally went to
of 2025
went to treatment and just got completely honest. Reported myself, took, not going back to work, picking up chips locally, just being honest on the podcast, which was another huge thing. Really just not giving, just being honest. And it was so freeing. The very cliche, but very true. It was such a relief to not have to lie anymore. And, I am still in the process of repairing the damage I've done, especially in my relationship. Absolute scorched trust.
Sure.
So it's not even yet like happily ever after. It's
right.
I'm active, like I'm living in a sober living home again. I took a job at a coffee shop again. I'm just going back to school, trying to show up as a father and as a partner and earn back trust and make a very long list of financial amends. And I'm very much back in early recovery, and I'm in the thick of it. But it's great. Life is great. I really have no. That's the part about God's mercy that I love, is that it is like new each day, and all it takes is for me to be honest and go back and do these like small,
right?
Yeah,
like actual repentance,
true,
which
actual repentance,
action. And I think
yes,
I'm curious, and this is what I love. Like, I think your story makes me excited about the message that I feel like the Lord has called me to take to the masses, which is aim for Jesus, get sobriety thrown in,
Yeah.
And like, let's do all of that work. And all of that work includes honesty and truthfulness. And like, when other people won't accept you back, he will, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you feel like this time around. Okay. So now you're back in early recovery. What are you going to do different this time to make sure that it doesn't get to that just cycle again? Like, what have you told yourself?
The big thing, I guess, like the mantra I'm trying to live by is that that my recovery is something to be cherished and protected, and that was absolutely something that I began to take for granted and then began to resent. And so I'm trying to, and has been the most difficult getting sober by far. I mean, I'm older, I have responsibility, I can't just, la-di-da, I'm just like, no, everything's fun and dandy and just move to a new city. And no, it's like, you're sober, great, now go face everything that you did while you were using. And I do not ever want to have to see my daughter on visitation day again.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. And then having the knowledge that that's always a possibility if I don't do what I'm supposed to do. So it's...
Well, we're praying for you,
working
man.
for it. Yeah.
And we're right there with you. And I think it's good. I think one of the goals of this podcast is to have people at different places. And I think there are people that I know are listening right now who are right where you're at, right? Awesome. And that's what I love. I was like, I don't want to just have all the clean buttoned up, like this is who I was 5 years ago, right? I mean, and I think what's interesting is you have the podcast, right? You are me, right? Yep. And what I want to tell people is I don't look down on you. I'm like, dude, I am you, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm one compromise away from that domino effect, right?
Yes.
And I have to be, and if you're listening to this, you have to be like the he today, I tomorrow that I have tattooed on my arm. And I think your story is a good reminder of that. Before we go, because I want to respect your time, but one of the things that I think I get asked, and I just don't know how to respond all the time, is from parents who say, they have a Jed, right? What is your advice to parents who have people like you, right, who have a son or daughter? Like, what do you tell them? What's the advice?
Unfortunately or fortunately, you can't rescue them from consequences. And this is one of those incredibly fine lines. It is an incredibly fine line, and there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, like age, what's going on with them. But you kind of need to honestly assess, get into Al-Anon. That's first. So that's like the support group for loved ones of people going through addiction.
Or at least something similar, right? Like,
or at least something similar. Yep.
Program,
You can do, Celebrate Recovery has their own version. And not rescuing them from consequences. Sometimes you have to let addiction do its job to bring them to their, letting them know that when they want help, then let's rock. But until then, I'm not going to actively participate in your self-destruction.
Well, and that's biblical, right? It's like, I actually think it's one of the scariest things in the Bible is when the Lord says, fine, you want it that way. I'm going to give you over to your desires. I'm going to let you have it your way. I'll be here when you're ready, but you just need to experience that. And I think that's hard for us as parents. You're a parent now, right?
Yeah.
And yet sometimes, I think many times, you have to just let them play that out. And you will be there and you will pray for them and their protection. And I'm sure your parents prayed for your protection a lot.
Oh my God, did they?
And here you are. You're still here, right?
Right.
Man, Jed, thank you for your radical vulnerability, your honesty. I think your story is one that we needed, and I'm so appreciative of you. And like I said, we're continuing to come alongside you and pray with you and for you. And I appreciate you finally telling the truth.
Yeah,
and that is so. We need more of that. Not people who are pretending that everything is fine, but who are willing. And I think the church then on the other side of that needs to be willing to hear those stories and be with those people like you. because I think part of the problem is that the church hasn't been that safe space where people can just bring their crap. They feel like they have to be buttoned up in order to come to Jesus, where Jesus is saying, you come to me and then we'll get to that point. So, Jed,
Right.
Thank you so much. If people want to check out your podcast, where can they go?
Yeah, Church and Other Drugs on every streaming platform. And then patreon.com/churchotherdrugs. And then you can find me on Instagram, jed.i.am.
Awesome. Jed, thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You know, I've been asked by some people, what do you do if you have a guest on the show who then relapses? And you know what my answer is? Fine. Like, you know, I think we have to, while I don't wish that on anyone, I know that it's a real possibility because I know that our recovery journeys aren't linear. And I just don't view it as an indictment like some people do. And I don't view it as an indictment like we ourselves do. Again, that's hard for some people to wrap their mind around because they think, well, then if people don't hear that you're going to come down hard on them, if you're going to pull this episode or you're going to do all this stuff, then they're going to use that as an excuse. And I'm like, listen, if people will use that as an excuse, they've got deeper work that they need, that they would have found another excuse. And I'm not sitting here making it easier for them. And the reason I say that is because, you know, with Jed's story not being linear, like if he calls me up tomorrow and is like, man, I started again, I'd be like, brother, then we still got work to do, right? And we always will have work to do. And my friend Jen Couch, who's been on the podcast, Sober Sis, she's like, listen, then we just use that as a data point, right? Then we use that, we beg the Lord to reveal, like, where do we need to do more of the work? And so I'm encouraged by Jed. I'm encouraged by his finally just getting honest and pulling the curtain back. And I just want that for you as well. I want that for me because I'm one decision away from going down the spiral and having the same story as Jed. And if you're honest, you are too. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Have so many exciting things that we're going to be that are going to be happening in this year. And I just am so appreciative of you being along and supporting. Thank you to Life Audio, lifeaudio.com for some other great podcasts. They have been along the journey and the ride in supporting this podcast from the very beginning. And I'm so grateful. Head on over to christianalcoholic.com to grab a copy of my book. And we will see you here next